What's up, everyone? Nickolas, Wildstar, candidate for California governor, here with another community Q&A discussion with my friend Darryl Cotton, who has joined me here, who we're going to be introducing our guest to you momentarily. But first, Darryl, what you got for me going on over there?
Hey, pleasure to be back. Glad to see you're in such great spirits. The world's falling down around us, but you know what? Nickolas is there. He's the man to the rescue. He's got that cape on. And just a little update before we bring in our new guest today is David Armstrong. He was a collective manager for Medimarts, and that was one of the nonprofits that existed and could do medical cannabis back when prior to Prop 64 being the law. But since hi Heidi, hello, happy first. One of the things that I think I'd like to talk about first is, what did you think of this SB 152 shuck and jive that our current governor slipped in, which is basically his way of trying to steal the recall election?
Pretty much. I mean, that's their MO anyways, is trying to switch the rules at the last minute. And we see that happening with this recall, with them trying to bump up that recall special election date. He's hoping that it plays in his favor, since he's been, having these vaccine lotteries and giving away millions of dollars of taxpayers' money to try to prop up our economy, paying people's rents and parking tickets and all of this stuff. So he's hoping that gains him some favor with the people of California, but it's upsetting us even more, which is why we're wanting that recall to happen as quickly as possible. So we're excited about it being, coming up quicker. But what it also does is it stresses us candidates to have to fundraise and meet those deadlines before that election date. So they're hoping it weeds out, a certain amount of competition and focuses on, that small group that they're already hoping to, challenge Gavin Newsom and keep him reelected. If people see Jenner or Cox or Faulkner or Ose or, any of those cats, they're not going to be inspired to want to vote no or yes on the recall. And that's these
people aren't spending the kind of time that you are too, trying to understand the issues and know what you're going to do when you hit the office running from day one.
Oh yeah, I'm digging my fingers deep in the dirt here, literally and figuratively. I mean,
we appreciate it, man.
Thank you.
So SB 152, though, it's just, to me, represents the extent of the evil and corruption that this governor is willing to go to try to maintain an office, which he doesn't belong in and hasn't belonged in since day one.
Just him and his legislators working together to try. Exactly. We, the people of California, didn't get to vote on that SB 152. They chose to do that without our consideration.
He's going to have some answering to do. And, I'm just here to tell you right now that in addition to the wonderful guest we have today and the history that should inspire people to take action, all our cannabis brothers and sisters, for absolutely certain, even those with a license. If you have a provisional license, you're not an annual license holder. They can pull that rug out from you from any time, at any time. Let's not face the reality until it hits us. But the real problem is we still are contrary to federal law. And Judge Thomas, U.S. Supreme Court Judge Thomas just came out and said that. So I'd like to thank Dave Armstrong, who we're about to invite in, for everything he's done to help get your name and your message out. He's been invaluable and will continue to be. How do we stand on campaign contributions, Nickolas? What's been happening on that?
Incredible. Due to Dave's match offering, Dave Armstrong offered to match any donation that people are willing to give up to $500. And yesterday I got two $500 donations.
Awesome.
And quite a lot of $25, $20, $42 donations. So everybody's just giving as much as they can to help hit that $5,000 goal as quickly as possible. But we're halfway there, and we're just looking to get a last little chunk of money to get us over the hump here. But once we have payments,
well, I was just going to say, once your audience knows what you're about to do, I just went live with it. you're seeking to try to get a federal understanding of Prop 64. One of the things you want to do is repeal it or nullify it on your first day in office. But the legal grounds that would get you there are if a federal judge would look at it and you said, yeah, Prop 64 was a lie. What Gavin Newsom, Kamala Harris, and Jerry Brown gave us back in 2016 was a lie.
Well,
and
yeah,
Nickolas represents that. So what are you looking for right now? What have you just published?
Well, together we created that writ request for a federal injunction, basically just a review of what's going on with Prop 64, since it does incriminate those cannabis providers, marijuana providers in the state of California, opposed to where if you are a medicinal marijuana patient, if you're making any purchases, that would be a violation of federal law.
Right.
Now, Prop 215 provided a loophole for that, to where they were protected. Now with Prop 64, it incriminates them and makes them and knowingly. And so if our state officials like Gavin Newsom and former state official Kamala Harris was involved in criminal activity, and especially in language in the bill that was coercive, or deceptive, then that should be clarified now. So I think it's best that we challenge the system now. As a candidate, that's what I'll do. And hopefully once I get elected governor, I'll be able to follow through on that by making sure that the federal state officials, get or at least recognize that there's some positive conflict there. But
they'll have to be held accountable for not just cannabis, which is kind of like the flag we plant on the hill of democracy. But let's bring in our great friend and ally to this campaign, Dave Armstrong, and let's have you at least tell the audience what this writ means. What are we going to be able to do when a federal judge rules on this?
Absolutely, I'm excited about it and looking forward to speaking more with Mr. Dave Armstrong is here with us from all the way. I don't know where you are. You're the Metamarks man, but where are you right now?
I'm in Idaho.
Oh, wow. All right. Well, Dave's in Idaho, but we're trying to get him back here to California. Dave, thank you for being here with us for this community Q&A chat.
No problem. Thanks for having me on, guys. It's just a story that needs to be told, and I'm sure I'm not the only one who's dealt with or dealing with it. And the point behind this whole thing is that there's cannabis inequity is basically what Prop 64 says. I mean, 215 allowed any group of individuals like us or anyone else to organize an association, a collective or a cooperative, and cultivate and consume their own cannabis amongst their group, so that there was no profit occurring because everybody's an equal owner of a collective or a cooperative, and no sale occurs when the transfer of U.S. currency and the controlled substance cannabis took place, because they already owned it. And when you said purchase earlier, I said, well, the term we used at our collective was
donation.
An equitable contribution.
All right.
You're just giving an equitable contribution back to the collective or cooperative for the overall cost to cultivate, package, have the storefront, the farm to table, so that your members could come in and pick up their medicine. And our pricing fluctuated year to year depending on our expenses and our yield.
Right. I hate to be rude. I got just one half of your face here. Is it possible to either slide to the right or your camera?
There you go.
There you go. All right.
Look at that, man. The guy has no lines in his face. He absolutely has no stress in his life.
Not like I used to.
I'd like to tell the audience how I came across Dave. So I was paying attention to cannabis law and thinking, I can't be the only one seeing this. And back in 2015, I believe it was, I saw him making arguments to the State Board of Equalization in California. And he was arguing that he can't be taxed as a collective, but a collective isn't. There's some distinctions here. That's why he's very precise in his words, Nickolas, between a collective and a cooperative. And the things that happened to him that really got my attention was he's known as Dank Dave, and he's got a Venmo, YouTube type of site. But this 4-minute audio where he's representing himself, and he says he's not a lawyer, he's not practicing law, but he undoes all their arguments in terms of why they're trying to tax him and charge patients for cannabis. Is there any chance you can pull that up?
Actually, yes, I was bringing that up here now. Let me see if I can cue that.
Because I know he's got a story that precedes that, but I do know that when I heard that, it's like, my God, somebody gets it.
All right.
I've been an admirer of his ever since.
Well, let's check out this video, everyone, and then we'll have Mr. Dank Dave himself break it down for us afterwards, if you could.
Dedicated all my time and energy to understanding and following the medical marijuana law of the state of California. But I'm sure most of you have looked at this case and looked at the information because, as the case earlier today, this all stems from a phone call that I made to the San in the state of California that I've been waiting to hear some clarification for all this time now, as I've always heard it was better to ask for permission rather than forgiveness. But I'm finding out when it involves millions, if not billions of dollars, there's not much forgiveness for the whistleblower or the person asking the question. As the Madam Chairwoman stated earlier, the core of this case turned from me asking a question and for a review of MediMarts to become a sales tax exempt entity in order to abide by current California law, turned into an audit, which of course I freely supplied information and point of contribution information to the board for their review. But now it's turned into a constitutional and civil rights issue of how anyone or any organization can pay, quote unquote, a sales tax on a transaction that involves U.S. currency in exchange for the controlled substance cannabis, without thereby admitting that they're violating higher federal law, because higher federal law expressly prohibits the sale of the controlled substance cannabis. So as I sit here before you, I'm definitely a citizen who believes in abiding by the law, paying taxes, contributing to the overall welfare and whatnot of the state and the city and the county that I may live in. But at the same time, I live with the fact that, well, if I follow state law on one hand, I'm violating federal law on the other. So I don't know if this is the forum, and if you folks can tell me how it would be possible for me or any other individual in the state of California that exchanges U.S. currency for the controlled substance cannabis isn't violating higher federal law, and thereby, just as I said, I'm glad to be here for my First and 14th Amendment right, but this concerns our Fifth Amendment right to self-incrimination in implicating oneself that a sale occurred when that transaction happens, and that I'm not violating a higher federal law that stems with the consequences of 10 years to life in prison. Whether it's me as the managing member making the decision for thousands and thousands of other individuals, or the individuals making that decision themselves unknowing and unwillingly. I could sit here and talk for hours, and I hope you have many questions for me, because I'll freely answer them. I have nothing to hide. I have no animosity towards the state of California or anyone in this room. I just simply sit here before you representing millions of other consumers that either aren't aware of this question or the great dangers and risk involved of admitting to a sale occurring when we exchange U.S. currency for the controlled substance cannabis. That's about all I've got to say right now.
Thank you. The department, please introduce yourself. You have 10 minutes. Thank you.
All right. Can you hear me?
Just the long story short, guys, 215 and SB 420 were written, devised, and made so that you weren't selling cannabis and you weren't profiting from the controlled substance cannabis. And that's why a cooperative or collective was mandatory, because everybody owned part of it equally, so there couldn't be a profit. If there were extra money at the end of the year, you put it back into the collective, whether it's a new facility, more security on the farm, whatever it may be. And our receipts didn't say sale and didn't say taxes. It said equitable contribution, as I mentioned earlier. And what happened along the line was the state of California and its elected leaders decided, hey, we could simply mislead these thousands of dispensaries and medical marijuana operators and patients into forming anything but a collective or a cooperative. In fact, Jerry Brown was AG at the time, and he wrote in SB 420, and it's funny how they use the word may instead of will, but he said you may want to form a nonprofit mutual beneficial corporation. He doesn't say that you must form a cooperative or a collective, which is what he should have said, because otherwise you're violating higher federal law. So I did what any other business person did. I followed what Jerry said. I formed a nonprofit mutual beneficial corporation.
Right.
Lo and behold, I find out about 8 months into the business, I'm like sitting down with Dave Hodges at a meeting in San Jose. And I go, well, wait a minute, that's how they're able to tax us, Dave. And he goes, yeah, we're not a legal entity under 215. I said, what? He goes, yeah, because you're a nonprofit mutual beneficial corporation, Dave, and not an actual collective or cooperative, you're an illegal entity. And therefore it's legal for the state of California to charge an illegal entity sales taxes. I said, oh my God, they've defrauded us all.
Yeah.
And the proof, people keep going, well, where's your proof? I said, the proof is I made this phone call to the SBOE after reading a letter from Hodges' attorney at the time that I hired and had to let go, that asked the SBOE, can we see a list of all the tax-exempt collectives and cooperatives? And they said, well, there isn't one. I said, well,
of course.
I said, how can there not be any legal entities in the state of California? That doesn't make sense, because we're all supposed to be nonprofit, not making sales, and a collective or a cooperative. So did Jerry's letter when he was AG that told me a nonprofit mutual beneficial corporation was maybe the way to go, was that misleading and misguiding me from the get-go?
Yes.
And Bill Panzer said, yeah. Wow. You know, later I found out Panzer's part of Normal, which is not our, not truly our friends, but we'll get into that later. So I was like, this is defrauding every one of us, as well as all the patients, so that California can collect sales taxes on cannabis. I mean, they want money from the largest cash crop in the state. Yeah. And they found a simple way to do it was just by not telling us the facts and the truth. Mm-hmm. And so when I made that call and said, look, I want a review or an analysis, because we've now abolished the nonprofit mutual beneficial corporation, and we've officially formed a collective, and here's our documents, we should be considered tax exempt according to the law itself.
Yeah, exactly.
215 and SB 420. And
Which comports with federal law.
And they went, wait a minute, Mr. Armstrong. So as you see, it took 5.5 years for them to get me that hearing date, to ask them the question. It's a simple one that we all should ask from the get-go. You know, if I'm going to start a cannabis business, how do I do it lawfully and follow higher federal law and state law, so that someday they don't decide to come and take me away in handcuffs and put me in federal prison for 10 years to life because you told me the wrong information.
Right.
And they're exempt. They're immune. Yeah,
qualified immunity, of course. You know, we defrauded you and lied to you the whole time. Well, geez, Dave, it's because we wanted tax money. We wanted sales tax money. And it's San Jose.
But don't lie to us.
San Jose even went further and called their tax on top of the state tax the marijuana business tax. And I said, guys, if that doesn't say that I'm selling marijuana, what in the hell does?
Exactly.
Yeah. And so I asked both of them. I said, I'm not against contributing to you guys, but you've got to call it something else. Call it an excise tax, call it something else, but not a sales tax. And if shit does hit the fan, excuse my French, are you guys going to come to my protection and keep me from going to prison? They said, no, Dave, you know, we can't. I said, well, this is all screwed up.
Yeah.
I said, none of this makes sense. Why aren't you telling people the truth? Well,
especially when they created the atmosphere to, again, criminalize you operating a legal business, you know, because essentially that's what you're doing under state law. But with them applying the tax, that's what then makes it criminal, because they aren't supposed to be taxing or getting money off of drugs, quote unquote. But by them using the law to get the tax from you, and like they said, they deemed you to be, I guess, an alien entity. So because of that, you're like in this gray area. That seems to be where government seems to operate the most, is in that gray area by exploiting businesses like yours.
Well, and most people won't litigate. Like what he was in command of the facts, and he litigated. What happened at that SBOE hearing? Did they give you your Fifth Amendment rights that you were asking?
No, they actually admitted that there's a conundrum between state law and federal law. But geez, Mr. Armstrong, we've delayed this hearing long enough that we've rewritten the law. We call it a Prop 64 now, that not only covers up that we misled, misguided everyone from the get-go, but it now makes what we were doing illegal legal. And the worst part about the whole thing is it just created even more cannabis inequity. Yeah. Because under Prop 215, like I said, any group of individuals like ourselves could get together and say, hey, let's grow some cannabis, let's grow our membership, and let's keep it all in-house, so we're not violating federal law and we're following state law. And lo and behold, California couldn't charge us sales taxes, because then they'd be breaking the law. Mm-hmm. I mean, imagine this, if it was truly legal, what's going on, they'd be doing it themselves. But instead, they're using their own citizens as guinea pigs to grow the cannabis, to sell the cannabis, to collect the taxes for them, so that they're not liable, they're not responsible. But you, the one who agreed to 64, gave up your Fifth Amendment right.
Right.
You are liable, you are responsible. The two words that they put into 64 that just prove the whole scheme to defraud us from the get-go. And I've talked to Darryl about this. I've got the definition right here, so I can read it to you.
All right.
It's unreasonably impracticable. Those two words are huge. And in fact, you can see that Nevada and several other states are now using it too. Unreasonably impractical means the measures necessary to comply with the law or regulation required such a high investment of risk, money, time, or any other resources or assets that the operation of a cannabis establishment is not worthy of being carried out in practice by a reasonably prudent business person. So what they're saying is, you signed up. You're on your own. You're at your own risk. But thanks for doing all the work and collecting the money for us.
Yeah, basically. You did all the heavy lifting.
If shit hits the fan and the IRS comes after you for a 280E rule and wants to put you out of business, we're going to say thanks for your time and effort, but you're now out of business.
Wow. I'm reasonably practical.
I'm gonna pull that up for you.
Reasonably impracticable, and it's in 64. It's the two words that save their butt. That if this ever goes to court, they're like, "Well, we told them it was unreasonably impractical, and they shouldn't have been in the business in the first place."
Wow.
So I made a little blurb for you. It's there in our chat. You might want to post this because this goes to two things: positive conflict and the unreasonably impracticable language that was in 64, which should have been a real warning shot when people read that, but most people missed it.
If that
Dave was referring to the lower one, I believe.
That isn't a positive, conflict. I don't know what is, but I mean, even worse is that 64 mandates sales.
Yep.
And mandates profit, which the Controlled Substance Act, if you read it expressly says that making a sale is not allowed and making profit from a controlled substance is not allowed. So what I was referring to on 64 being worse than anything ever is that three guys like us can't form a collective or a cooperative. We've now got to stand in line, pay some fees, and hope that we get through the door where under 215, anybody could, that was your license.
Right.
Any group of people could get together and start growing and make their own medicine. Well, now, like I said, it's a cannabis inequity that needs to be overcome. The door's closed. You got to have cash lawyers and big people behind you, or you don't even get to walk through the door where 215 any of us could.
Can I ask you something about that?
Yeah.
Dave? Okay, so what's really changed now is that there's now a huge machine that is involved with cannabis consulting, that's involved with the permitting process, that's involved with California Environmental Equality Acts, and all the things that are necessary to get one of these limited edition licenses. We didn't have that under 215. Some of the things I think we've learned under 64 is there are benefits to environmental protections and management, but how many people today and how many governments rely on multiple applications where that money's not refunded and they slow walk them? That might take a year or two, in some cases 4 and 5 years, and they're still in an application process. Would Dave, would we have been in business if we had to undertake those kind of efforts to do a collective?
No,
of course not.
It's gotten worse, not better. And even beyond that, not that anyone can now open up a store, is that the over-exorbitant tax rate of 25% to 45%, maybe even going higher if the feds decide they want to add a federal tax to it. I mean, the marijuana minority is like 20% of the population consumes cannabis, where, other things like alcohol at 60%.
Right.
And the marijuana minority is usually the less fortunate people, and a lot of them are colored, black, white, yellow, brown, whatever. So here we are taking advantage of the marijuana minority by charging this outrageous, over-exorbitant sin tax on a product that kills no one. And it just blows my mind. I've had to kind of let this go. And I just saw a recent post in Colorado where the governor over there just signed a bill to get rid of medical marijuana. And the reason is the medical marijuana community can cultivate and get an equitable contribution for the cannabis for a whole lot less, because they're not
getting any money from it. That's why.
Because they can't make a profit.
Exactly. Government. I wanted to bring up this Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas recently pointed out the hypocrisy in the policies regarding marijuana and cannabis in the country, because federal policy now conflicts with state law. So like you guys are saying, what are they going to do about it? And something needs to be done to address the issue now, especially since they're trying to fast track commercialize the industry through, Prop 64 here in California and the MORE Act, in Congress.
Well,
But it is definitely a CYA. It's to cover your ass, and they're using it right now pretty much to make sure that they're protected. But what that's also done is that's created a divide, like you said, between, businesses such as yours that started under Prop 215 and were legal entities versus the Philip Morris, cookies brands coming along to kind of swoop in under 64. So
well, those guys can't compete because they need to make a profit.
Right.
And they want to make a profit.
Under 64.
So those guys can't compete.
We got a playback somewhere. Somebody's playing back.
Right.
We got to turn off your feed.
Okay, I'm good.
All right, thank you. So thanks for bringing this up for me, Cotton. He also brought this up how a little-known tax auditing firm became kingmakers of California cannabis, because now they've created a new industry from this for auditors and the weighers and whatever the case may be. More regulatory agencies to profit off of.
Can I speak to the HDL particularly, because I've done a lot of research with them. Do you mind?
Yes, please.
Okay. So the League of California Cities is heavily influenced. Most of your local governments are influenced by that association. And when HDL, and there is that link there, the Kingmakers of California Cannabis, and I normally don't give kudos to MJ Biz Daily. I've always found that they tend to support the status quo. And I think media, and cannabis media in particular, has to take a hard look at why we, the people, are being forced to give up our rights to make recreational cannabis the law of the land. And the problem with HDL is here's what they'll do. They'll go to a city and they'll say, listen, I know this is new. You've got state laws. You can have local laws. What we'll do is we'll put you in a completely managed system of all your regulations, and you'll have everything necessary to function with applications and tax collections and regulations and everything else. All we're going to ask that happens is that when we get to audit those licensees, we get 45% of what we recover. So I know that's not unusual. That happens in other relationships with private auditing firms and consultants such as HDL. But the thing is they're so heavily engaged across the state, and most of these patchwork quilts of licenses from city to city couldn't be managed without some uniformity. So again, when you're governor, you have to cut these lobbyist ties, and you really have to make sure that the state does the job of setting forth a framework that the cities can live within. And HDL is one of the worst. And there's others, but they're one of the worst.
You want to know what's really interesting about what you just brought up is that gentleman, David McPherson, that goes around to cities of California and says, here's this wonderful plan of how you can tax the poor marijuana minority. He used to work for the SBOE.
Really?
Yeah. So
why am I not surprised?
What he did was took his knowledge of the corruption that began at the SBOE and decided, hey, I can make so much money. I'm going to leave the SBOE, take this concept, and go educate each city one at a time on how this scheme works. This scheme to defraud marijuana patients across the state of California. Yeah, David McPherson was with the SBOE back with Betty Yee, back in the days when the city of Oakland and the SBOE, and of course our friends at Harborside, somehow came up with this brilliant idea. And I love and hate Steve D'Angelo at the same time. I can't prove it, but I'm sure he sat down with them and said, geez, guys, all you got to do is when you codify Prop 215 with SB 420, just don't say that they have to be a collective or a cooperative. In fact, Jerry over there can write a letter saying that they may want to form some other entity, and most of them will. And unknowingly, they're not the right entity. So now we can tax the shit out of them.
Wow.
I mean, it's so simple, but yet it's so sad. Mm-hmm. And this movement, medical marijuana, started 25 years ago in California. It's gone from, a one-page Prop 215 to a 64, 69 page Prop 64 and has totally corrupted the entire intent that Dennis Perone had, Jack Herrera, all these iconic leaders that got us to where we could cultivate and consume cannabis without going to jail or federal prison. And they've turned it upside down, and everybody's like, yay, marijuana's legal now.
Not everybody.
But I'm paying $25 for a gram that costs $1 to make or grow.
Yep. Does this ring a bell? Remember when there was the Friends of 64, Dave, and all these artists were coming out, and they're all extolling the virtues of progressive cannabis law. But if you read these, because these are clips right off of that website I saved, and I started this website as No More on 64 to give people a heads up as to what they don't know. But everybody, for the most part, 90% of these actors and politicians, celebrities, all of these people are talking about the medical benefits of cannabis. They're not talking about the recreational. So from this, if you're able to click that Attorney's Corner, please, we've developed an Attorney's Corner. So everything in this on page 3, we talk about specifics that are real problems for 64. And the number one thing I'd like to focus on, since as long as we were talking about the SBOE and their hide the P, that's page 1. At the bottom, you'll go to page 2, drop down. Next one, it'll say next at the bottom of the, no, not too far, right there. Next. And one more next. All right, so this page is the one that really matters. At the top, what's fun is that the Stanford Law School of Policy took a hard look at the differences between medical and recreational after 64 had passed, and they identified 8 conflicts that would have to be resolved based on, courts deciding that. And to what we talked about earlier, Nick's going to be filing a writ in federal court seeking that clarity. And Judge, Thomas, Supreme Court Justice Thomas, Clarence Thomas, just indicated that these inconsistencies between state and federal law are doing a number of damaging things to the judiciary. In addition to clogging them up, it's allowing this pay to play. And when we start talking about pay to play, let's go back to where the money goes. So could you go back to No More?
Well,
because I want to show you the No More site actually lists the number one thing that I think they had, they should be criminally prosecuted to under Attorney's Corner, page 3.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where does the money go. So it doesn't go to the general fund. It goes to a special trust fund. And on page 3 of this, I give you the link where you can see it. I don't remember every section, but drop down to the one that talks about the general fund.
Let's see.
Well, because Nick's not a career politician and he's actually a person just like the rest of us, he can single-handedly save medical marijuana, not only in California, but across the country. Because just as this movement started there 25 years ago, the rest of the country needs to learn what we know and what Nick sees and is going to bring to light. I mean, when your own state and city elected officials defraud the public, they lose public trust. But they use the media and movie stars to try to paint this like they're doing something great and they're helping medical or marijuana consumers, when in fact they're doing the exact opposite. Like I said, 64 won't let anybody in the door unless you've got the money and special interest behind you.
So what about social equity?
And you know and I know that if this was alcohol and you told the guy buying his 6-pack of beer or his bottle of wine that he had to pay 45 cents on the dollar to pick up his booze or whatever, the nation would be in an uproar.
Another way you can relate that is just then the cost of medication alone. I mean, a lot of people's complaint right now is that if they go to buy prescription drugs, that the cost
not
of
taxed.
But when you have more providers for it or buy it from Canada or something like that, it's much cheaper,
Well, and marijuana has never killed anybody, so why are they sin taxing the shit out of it?
Exactly.
And when alcohol kills people every day, I mean, there's so many ambiguities here.
Well, I just found it. It's on page 3. If you could blow up 3.7, I think if this doesn't piss people off, then they're.
I think this is page 3.
There
3.7.
you are, right there.
3.7 talks about Section 7. This is in 64, and it says that the California Marijuana Tax Fund is created in the state treasury as a special trust fund. All fees, taxes, investment interest amounts collected and paid to the Bureau of Cannabis Control fall under the full control and discretion of the BCC and shall not be a part of or subject to the controls and review of the general fund or its fiscal year accounting and auditing practices. All revenues created by or generated by the BCC and its agencies will not be considered monies for purposes of subdivisions A and B.
So
in
it's
Article 16 of the California Constitution, you're not supporting school systems or anything else. So what do? The BCC collects monies from raids, from abatement, from licensing, from taxes, and it doesn't go into the general fund. It's not accounted. So where does it go? It goes into special trust funds where up to $11 million, you do not have to disclose who is managing that trust fund.
Is that the
What does
link?
that tell you? They've got about 1,000 trust funds right now with hundreds of millions of dollars in it and only getting fatter. And the taxpayers are footing the bill without even knowing what's being collected.
Is this the link to it right underneath? 3.
Yeah, all my links go there. But if you don't take my word for it, is what I always say. Go ahead and click this link, and this will get you right to Chapter 7 of the Prop 64.
Well,
So,
Nick, once your writ it gets in front of the federal government and they say, oh, yeah, there's a positive conflict here, let's follow the money, find out where all this cannabis taxes
bingo.
are going, who's cashing in, because it's my belief that they said, you know what, we could use pot to take care of our pension plans because
Clearly.
more and more people are retiring every day, and we got to pay the new guy more money, and then when he retires, we got to pay the next guy more money. So this pension plan promise that you mentioned yesterday, there's no way for them to come up with the funds unless they go, oh, let's go after the stupid stoners that are clapping and standing in line paying 45 cents on the dollar to get their weed now. Basically, California is the new cannabis cartel.
Right.
What did they just pass, though? That's going to just double that down. Hallucinogenics. That's due to pass in early July. So the same thing. What was illegal then and got you 10 years is now legal as long as they can ride on their backs to cover pension debt.
Exactly.
And we sit here and we legalize, this is great, it's legal, but we are getting bent over like no other, and it's no wonder people are going black market. I mean, if my neighbor's growing in his basement and he offers me an ounce for $100 or $50, and the only other choice is to go down to the corporate cartel dispensary and pay $250 or $300 for it, where the hell do you think I'm going to go?
Exactly.
Well, if you're a patient, it's like when we had Sandra Lepp on a week or so ago. Eddie's not doing well. He needs more medicine than 6 plants can provide. And what are they doing? They're flying over their properties, low-flying helicopters, and just creating havoc and tyranny in these communities. We've had guests like Krista Koenig and some of the people in the SLO area. Enough. You cannot continue to treat the cannabis cultivator as a criminal. You are the fucking criminals.
Right. We got to make sure that they know that. But the only way to really seal the deal is by sending their asses to jail. But right now, no government is going to do that.
Nick, you're the only one with the balls enough to do it, which is why I made my promise to match contributions. In fact, in the last 2 days, you collected some $1,425.
Right on.
Yes.
I'm matching that today. So
all right, incredible.
You're going to be over $3,000, so you only need another $2,000. And we got Wildstar for weed on the ballot. I mean,
exactly. That's what we want. Free to weed.
Everything happens for a reason. Maybe the good thing about COVID was, it brought light to corruption in the California government. As Gavin had the spotlight on him.
Exactly.
And now is the time for the people to say, you know what? We're tired of our elected officials lying to us. In fact, you defrauded the entire cannabis community with your lies on 64. You said you were going to bring cannabis inequity or fix it.
It's gotten worse.
It's only made it worse. Less people can cultivate and consume it on their own. And to get taxed at 25 to 45 or more percent on the dollar is just egregious. No
Dave,
other.
I'm going to touch on something here that it's a little difficult for people to hear. But when we need representation, we're going to go to a lawyer. And what about lawyers? Well, lawyers, if it's criminal or civil, they're going to get into your world. They're going to know what you have, what your constitution is in terms of how strong are you to fight something. But they're going to know how much money you have too. And their job is to stay in business, number one. And they want to be there for the next case and the next case and the next case. So if they can make a deal, they're going to make that deal. One that might, skin you alive, or one that might leave you a little on your back. Dave has had some attorneys. And what happens when it looks like you have a case, Dave, and the other side's going to blink? What do?
Well, they threaten the lawyers, with what's the future of your career going to look like if this all shakes down. And one of my best lawyers that represented me in front of the Secretary of State to get 2 words added to the 64 ballot to say in California, because the way it was originally written made it sound like it's going to be legal everywhere. They offered him a job in Sacramento
To shut you up.
More money,
And he could no longer represent you then, right?
Exactly. But the one thing, guys, that no matter how much money they have, because let's face it, we're up against the 5th largest economy in the world. These guys, these corporate people that control cannabis today, the one thing that they don't have is truth and facts. We can point out, and it's evident, it's clearly evident that we've been defrauded from the get-go. And every person that's watching or that watches this later that enjoys marijuana for whether it's a medical reason or just to be happy, will stand up and vote for Mr. Wildstar here, who sees through this bullshit.
What about the guys that have been raided? Those are the people, in my opinion, that are the true Americans, because they didn't get sucked into this vortex, this scheme that you had to be licensed at the state level, which would be in direct conflict with higher federal law. Exactly what you claimed back to the State Board of Equalization. So those that are being raided, robbed, and God knows sometimes beat up and killed, those are the true Americans, Nickolas. And even though they may not want to be known and publicly out there, they should be assisting you in getting elected. It all takes
anonymously. You can always help out anonymously.
It's funny you mentioned that, because a friend that I had in the industry called me 2 days ago and said, "Man, they just raided me." And I said, "Do you need to get bailed out of jail?" He said, "No, they just took all my product and all my equipment and let me go."
And they don't file charges?
No, because they're going to go sell his product and his equipment to the corporate entities that are going to collect taxes on it, so they make money.
They buy more helicopters. They buy more homes on the lake. All of this shit's going down under our noses, but some of us are paying attention to it and looking for leaders that will sit in those offices and do their jobs.
Yeah, and there isn't ever any audits of the evidence that's collected, under that eminent domain.
You're never charged.
Procedures.
You're not charged. It's a new industry.
We have all the facts necessary. We have the truth to prove that California conspired to control cannabis and take it away from the people. I had to walk away from it after a 5.5-year fight, and I wouldn't have, but they made some threats to me that, when they say they're going to take your son from you and use federal law and child protective services, you kind of go, oh shit. And then when they went after my landlord, and the city of San Jose was going to fine my landlord $10,000 a day if he let me stay in there. And I'd been there for 7 years, and he loves me and I loved him. But he's like, "Dave, they're coming down on me so hard, I got no choice, but I got to evict you." So once I didn't have a storefront, and I tried to keep up our numbers and our revenue so that we could pay for 26 employees strictly through delivery, it was economically impossible. So I had to let 26 employees go and had to let down 25,000 plus medical marijuana patients. It brings tears to my eyes that this whole thing happened the way it did.
I'm glad you're back, Dave. I'm glad you're back.
I'm only back to tell the story and the truth and maybe enlighten people. Maybe this movement that started 25 years ago in California can be saved. We can save the medical marijuana patients' rights to cultivate.
I think it can be. I think it can be. Nickolas,
I mean,
can you bring up the writ again? Can you explain to the audience, and Dave knows as well, what are we trying to accomplish with the writ?
Oh,
in
yeah.
short?
If you could
all you
explain
have
it
to prove, all you have to prove with the writ is that there's a positive conflict, and like we said, sales aren't allowed, neither's profit under the Controlled Substance Act, and 64 mandates it. If that, I mean, you don't have to be a lawyer to understand that. My God. And
Well,
then,
the reason page 2's here in the very first paragraph, it is Mr. Wildstar, a freedom fighter, also happens to be a black man himself, is seeking justice, not just for the minority person who has been disproportionately affected by our nation's war on drugs, but for all people that rely on state law and regulation, whereby under the 10th Amendment, it protects the state and those cannabis agencies that would be immune from federal charges, but inter alia, which means in addition, violate the Controlled Substance Act, but not the licensee, who is coerced into believing that federal criminal charges would not apply even when the licensee is knowingly violating higher federal law. So from this, we're going to do the Perone Act, and the Perone Act is going to give some bridge legislation which allows the licensees to stay in business, okay? But they're going to have to acknowledge that they are knowingly violating federal law, okay? Yet a whole new industry is coming back, Dave, and that's the industry you helped start. And for the reasons that it should exist, for the health, the compassion, and the welfare. I mean, look at what happened in San Francisco, at the San Francisco's Buyer Club with Perone and Wayne Justman, Brownie Mary. I mean, these were hundreds of thousands of patients that were dying, and no traditional medicine would help them.
Darryl, I didn't start it. When Obama got elected in 2008 and got on television and said, if you follow state law, the federal enforcement agencies will not come after you. And I'm born and raised in Idaho, so I looked at my wife and said, honey, let's sell the house, pack the bags, let's go to California and grow some money on trees. So
literally.
I moved to Lake County. I figured the closer I get to Humboldt, the better I'm going to learn from these growers. And that's when I met Eddie Lepp. I went to Eddie Lepp's going to prison party, and Jack Herrera was there.
Nice.
So I got to meet these two icons of the industry. And, you know, the 5 minutes I had with Jack, and he signed my Emperor Wears No Clothes book, he says, why did you come here, Dave? And I said, to follow in your footsteps. You know, the people should have the right to grow cannabis just like they can grow tomatoes in their garden.
Exactly.
And reap the benefits from it. And then, of course, Jack passed away shortly thereafter, and I wish he was here today because that gentleman, it would be his face here in the middle or on the left here instead of Nick, and Jack would be running for goddamn governor, and he'd get elected.
He'd have my vote, that's for sure.
So, you know, and I just read all the rules and all the guidelines, and I was following everything along. And then, like I said, that one day at a cannabis meeting in San Jose, and Dave Hodges and I are talking, and he goes, look at this letter that Bill Panzer sent to the SBOE for me, asking for a list of all the sales tax exempt entities that were collectives or cooperatives, because that's what you're supposed to be. That's what you have to be in order to follow 215. And I went, wow. So you're telling me that they misled and misguided all of us from the get-go? He's like, well, that's what Panzer's saying. And they responded to Panzer that there was zero collectives or cooperatives. And this was in 2011. Wow. And so that's when I said, okay, I'm going to dissolve the nonprofit mutual beneficial corporation. We're going to get the paperwork for a collective done with our lawyers. And I'm making the call to the SBOE, and I'm saying, hey, we're an actually lawful collective, and according to the law, 215 and SB 420, we're tax exempt, because otherwise we're breaking the law and so are you. And that's when they took 5.5 years to give me the seat at that table to ask the same freaking question. But
in that, for a way out.
in that time, gentlemen, and I can't say for sure, but I'm pretty damn sure they spent that 5.5 years writing Prop 64 to cover their ass.
Yeah.
And to make what they've been doing illegally for so long legal.
Right.
And actually ask for more money. I mean, they actually listened to a lot of things my lawyers and I said. They call it an excise tax instead of sales tax on top.
Right.
You know, it blew my mind. And my lawyers and I sat down and we said, look, we are willing to contribute to the state fund and the city and the county fund so you can enforce better rules.
There you go.
You can do better education.
Right.
So we can all sit here and admit we need better rules in 215 because it's too vague. But we needed to, as an industry, to get together and tell them what we wanted the rules to be, not let them make them for us.
Or take your money and use it to police you. Like you said, take the money and use it to educate, or, you know, make sure that
we don't even know where it's going.
Rules.
Well, I was telling Darryl the other day on the phone, before I was a budsman, I was a bondsman. I owned a bail bond company in Idaho. And the bail bond business is more cutthroat, if you can believe it or not, than the bud business. I mean, your mother will slit your throat to write a $20,000 bond, go throw the bond in the jailer's window before you get over there, even though you got the cosigner on the phone. But the one thing the bond industry did was, even though there was a lot of animosity between us and competition was fierce, we had a national organization. We met once a year in Vegas, and yes, we had some fun and partied. But what our concern was that different states were passing pretrial release laws. So all of a sudden, all these people we were getting out on DUIs and domestic violence or whatever, the courts and the jails were just letting them out on their own. We're like, hey, wait a minute, that's our business. You know, we get these people out of jail, and if they don't go to court, we go find them and we bring them back to jail so they go to court. But, you know, that's even now being ostracized as some kind of an equity, racial inequity thing too. So, but my point being is that as an organization, as people who prefer cannabis as a medicine, we need to get together on a state and local and national level and kibosh this crap.
Yeah.
Go to Washington and say, look, you can't just do this and that here and there, especially if it flies in the face of your own laws.
Exactly. Well, we can
What
leave
did you have in mind? Is that organization out there already, Dave, or does it have to be created?
It has to be created because the ones that are out there right now, guys, were developed by, you know, these corporate entities like Harborside. Their goal is to get rid of the competition. I mean, these corporate guys do not want ma and pa's starting up grows and selling their cannabis at $2 or $3 a gram when they're collecting $15 to $25 for a gram and making a profit. But that's like, not what.
Are these rich people not rich enough to not, you know, think that you shouldn't be able to have a slice of the pie? I mean, geez, that's what the American dream is supposed to be all about.
Even worse, Nick, is God put the plant on this planet for the people to make us happy, to feed and clothe us. They didn't put it on this planet. They didn't put it on this planet so greedy government and capitalistic corporations could bend us over and tax the shit out of us.
Exactly.
So what would the national representation look like?
Well, you would have chapters or factions in every city and every state. So that
you don't have that with NORML and ASA and all that?
Like I said, you've got to start fresh with leadership like yourselves that isn't biased, isn't a corrupt career politician who's got, you know, contributors in their back pocket. You know, since Citizen United held up and allows corporations to give unlimited funds to our politicians, they're bought and sold. They don't care what the people say. They're going to do where the money's coming from. I mean, we see it more and more every day. And then the qualified immunity thing protects them from us following the money and saying, geez, Gavin, how come you're giving yourself a check every year for a couple $1 million that we can't find out about when this you said this money was going to go to the schools, but it's not.
Right.
You said it's going to the pension funds.
Steven's asking about the website or contact. So if you're interested in what we're talking about, Steven, and like to follow up, I really suggest going to the No More on 64 site, and maybe you can put that back up again, because on that site we have the Attorney's Corner. And what I asked to do, and this is well before I was getting into all this with Dave and a lot of the other guests we've had, is I wanted to know with specific language that was in 64, how could attorneys justify that? Because if we're hiring an attorney, then I want to know how they square what was in 64. Had that been a contract with their client? Would they have recommended it, the client sign it? Of course not. I mean, none of these things were established in advance. We call it building a plane while you're trying to fly it. And today, there's people that form lines, or at least used to, it's coming off a little bit, to get these licenses, which are being bought and paid for under the table, and people are getting really, really, really rich. And it's not being done equitably. It's certainly not what Dennis had in mind and what Dave did back in the 2015s and 16s. And what I would only differ with him on is, well, Jack, her, and Dennis Perone may no longer be here with us. They are embodied in the type of person that Dave is and what he's done. The next generation will have to take on where we left off, and hopefully we're setting some kind of example for that. And pray we get leadership like Nickolas Wildstar that can undo some of this. But nonetheless, going forward, you always got to watch out, because they're lurking around the corner to steal your rights.
Exactly.
If we don't act now to save our rights to the plant, we'll never have them. I mean, right. I joked to Darryl the other day, and I said, soon they're going to take away the personal growth. I mean, they've already closed the window so close that very few can do it. But I said, eventually they don't want anybody growing tomatoes in their backyard for free.
No.
They want you to have to go to their store and pay $5 a tomato.
Exactly.
Are you getting the kind of press when you were going through all this? Were people paying attention to what you were warning was coming, Dave? Or have you been sort of like just kind of, oh, pat you on the head, go away?
Well, if you go to dankdave.com, it was about 5 years ago today that I made several videos trying to explain how the state government, and it's several entities, you know, it's the Secretary of State, it's the SBOE, it was the AG's office. I mean, I've even got a letter from Kamala Harris, who's, you know, obviously now in an even bigger position of power, trying to, you know, justify what they were doing. And I said, no matter how you try to spin it, you know, ma'am, what you've done is wrong, and what you're doing now is wrong. You know, you can have all your media outlets and all your corporate interests try to make this sound like you're legalizing marijuana for everybody and it's a great thing. But all you're doing is making it harder for anyone to get into the business. You're making it more expensive for patients or people to acquire cannabis. I don't get it. You know,
Dave, what's happened to those communities? Like when we were medical, you know, you'd have thriving communities, you'd have jobs, you'd have restaurants, you know, you'd have tourism. What's happening today?
A lot of them went underground and have somehow survived. If you go back to that picture right there, Darryl, that farm was built over an 8-year period. And it was built with the money from the patients that came in and made equitable contributions on a daily basis.
So you had no investor money there?
No, or there would have been special interest behind it. It was like, I tried to explain to people, we can't take money from a guy and say, oh, you're going to own 50% of this business because you gave me $5 million. I said, dude, right. The collective is equally owned by every member of the collective, and there's 20-some thousand of them. I said, I just am the guy that manages this giant hive. And we make the honey out on this farm, and then we bring it to the table where the bees come in and they collect their honey and they donate, or I shouldn't say donate, they make an equitable contribution towards the overall cost and expenses to build what you see behind you. Every year when we'd have a surplus, we'd either have to lower our prices the next year for our product, or we'd put it back into the infrastructure. Right. That's a big word right now, but you know, we would spend more money fortifying the farm, adding to it so we could grow more, because we could never grow enough. We actually had to stop allowing new patients to come in, because if we didn't, we would run out of cannabis.
Can I say something? As a medicinal marijuana patient that used to attend collectives, that was one of the biggest attractions to me, was going there knowing that I was a contributor towards the cultivation.
You were part owner. You were part owner.
Yeah, exactly. I was a part owner, but I was still just a customer, but it made me want to keep coming back to that dispensary, you know what I mean? And
well, they listened to you.
And of course, they didn't have any taxes. The prices were always right. I mean, it was just an overall win-win-win, All right, there we go.
This was one of the signs that was in our store. $1 for a gram.
What's that?
You know, one, do the math. 7 grams for $26 out the door.
Wow.
That's satisfaction guaranteed. If you didn't like your medicine, you could bring it back, and people go, "Well, how the hell can you do that?"
Exactly.
I said, because it's your medicine. If you didn't like it, you bring it back, and we just exchange it for something else, or we'll give you your equitable contribution back and take the medicine. People are like, "Well, nobody else does that."
Yeah, now it's all sales are final. Once you leave the door, it's hey, it's yours. So
can you believe 7 grams for $26?
No.
Well, if you're not paying 75% to DC and Sacramento.
Exactly. And I mean, we got our cost, our yield.
Not getting that.
As our yield went up, our cost per gram went down.
So they didn't know what to do about Dave. They had to put him away and silence him. So the combination of getting him kicked off his property, and I guess you were saddled with a tax liability when it was all said and done.
Well, that's an interesting story too, because I actually have the needle in the haystack or the pea in the mattress. We took this to the appellate court of the state of California, and the ruling, the very first sentence was, Mr. Armstrong is not responsible for paying sales tax on medical marijuana because it would violate his Fifth Amendment right. But the entity, and this is where they went back 5-6 years to when I had the nonprofit mutual beneficial corporation, they said, well, since that was an illegal entity, the entity owes the tax. But San Jose didn't care. They still left my name on the lawsuit as an individual.
Of course.
And I said, look, I'm just one individual out of 25,000 individuals. I don't own the collective.
Right.
I just manage it. All of us own it. And I said, you can't ask me to make the decision for these 25,000 people when they come in. Would you like to pay sales tax on your equitable contribution today? Because if you do, then you're violating federal law. So I was standing up for all these people.
Cannabis would look a lot different today, Nick and Dave, had they listened to Dave and they understood that they were praying to the higher God. It was totally financially driven, and maybe they were being forced to do so. But here we are today with an opportunity to change it, and it's going to come down to how the writ is determined at the federal level. If positive conflict does indeed exist, we're going to take that back to state court, and under res judicata, we're going to put a class action together where we're going to chase all the money that was taken. I mean, we have thousands of places where people have been raided, asset forfeiture, their homes destroyed, those that have applied for licenses and didn't get them. But that justice needs to come, and Nickolas Wildstar is the guy to get us there.
Well, everything's about time. Everything's about timing, and it's my belief that right now that man you see in front of us that's got the balls to take on the big bear can not only restore medical marijuana, but revive medical marijuana in the state of California, which will eventually sweep across the nation. Because
once they follow California's lead,
once the truth and the facts come out and people realize that they've been lied to,
they'll be awakened, and
that they're being taken advantage of financially. I mean, the Cole memo doesn't protect recreational marijuana. It's strictly medical. We got a long way. In a long time, and then all of a sudden greedy government stepped in and corporate capitalists stepped in. They say, hey, we can just control and monopolize this whole industry, and these folks will thank us for it. They'll think we legalized weed for them. I'm like, no. We need medical marijuana back, like I said, so I can grow my own damn tomatoes if I feel like it.
Precisely.
And we can improve on 215. I mean, this is the thing. The Perone Act, it's coming. It's a work in progress. Draft versions will be ready by midweek of next week, maybe earlier. But the nice thing about it is we've learned from 64 what not to do. And we're not going to go back to compassion without having some of the benefits that, go with environmental controls and so on.
We can take the good things from 64. As I said, my lawyers and I said to them, we agree that we should be making equitable contributions to the state and the county and the city so that you can enforce rules, so you can educate the public. Mm-hmm. But they got too greedy. They said, "Oh, how much are you thinking, Dave?" I said, "I don't know. Since we're not required to pay sales tax, maybe a reasonable 9-10%, and you guys can divvy it up amongst yourselves."
That's a lot.
Like any other. Whatever.
Or my preferred method is just go square footage. And then every year that you've had a transparent and compatible relationship with the agencies, give them a 25% canopy size increase. Right now, like tomorrow's guest is James Cotton. He's a biologist, a scientist, and he sees the problems with our aquifers and our freshwater availability. It's obvious that we're in severe droughts right now, but we can't just keep giving all these 1 million square foot canopy licenses for cannabis and not know that the water is going to be impacted for not just cannabis, but all these other traditional agricultural farms as well. And that takes leadership, which currently we do not have.
Well, that's where you're ahead of the game with your aquaponics and your system where 1/10 of the water is needed to grow the plant and produce the yield that you need. We can't do any of this without that man right there.
Nickolas, you got a lot on your plate, brother.
And Nick, know that they're going to come at you from every angle because this is about billions and billions of dollars. And what they did to me was right out of a Hollywood story, like Johnny Depp and Blow.
That's why I'm glad that I got you guys behind me, because you're the powerhouses that are going to carry me over this wall,
I think Dave and I got 5 years, so after that, it's all on you, Nickolas.
We're just people who
special election. This special election makes the bar really low. All we got to do is just get over that hump, and trust me, we're never turning back. When you talk about bears, literally, I am up against that since my opponent, John Cox, is going around campaigning with an actual bear. So yes, it has been quite the circus, but I think
we're going to get you a weed hat. It says Wildstar for weed.
All right. I like that.
We're going to make him his own strain, Dave. We're going to have a Wildstar OG.
Well, I mean, just because we're the minority that only 20% of the people smoke cannabis, you encompass Democrat, Republican, Independents, black, white, yellow, brown, male, female.
Exactly.
We all consume cannabis of all shapes, sizes, and colors. So you're standing up for all the little guys.
Indeed.
Yeah, not to mention,
Dave, can we count on having you back after the writ has been ruled upon?
Or even before that? I think that writ should have been done years ago. We shouldn't have let these guys get away with this robbery for the last 5 years. But like I said, they beat me up financially, mentally, physically, every way they could. That I finally just had to run back to Idaho, where I came from, and hide.
Yep. Right. We're going to welcome you back, brother.
Yeah, I wanted to take a moment because you did mention how you wanted to visit the website, Wildstar2022.com. There's a lot of people out there that haven't yet. So if you haven't, definitely visit the website now, because our friend Dave here is going to be making a contribution to our money bomb. So currently we've been able to fundraise $1,426.
Started out with what, 100?
Started out with $100.
You had 152 in there.
None of us are rich. None of us have a lot of money, but everybody that is involved in this industry that's not part of the oligarchy, that's part of the elite, understands that to save this thing, we got to have a unified voice, and that voice is Mr. Wildstar.
Well, in the 2 days since I made my promise to match, you raised $1,275 in the last 2 days, and I've got it right here to match $12.75, but it says for security reasons, please call the number on the back of your credit card to verify this transaction. So as soon as we get off the phone and I make that call, this $1,426 is going to go up another $1,275. So you got 3,000 plus.
Nice.
And even if you're one of these cannabis people that has become complicit and said, rather than dying and going away, I'm going to play their game, just know that you're never safe from either the federal government or the larger corporations. You can make an anonymous contribution to this campaign, and we won't put your name over here that you donated. But just know that you're trying to save the entire right of the people to the plant itself. I mean, hell, I want more than 20% of the public consuming marijuana because I think it's a great plant. It's one plant that doesn't have to poison you to make you feel euphoric.
Yeah.
It's actually a natural part of your cannabinoid system.
Exactly. They don't even talk about that. I got to correct something that you said really quickly. Sure. All campaign donations are public information. It doesn't have to be listed on the website as far as if you make a donation, but if anybody makes a donation $100 and more, you have to provide your employer information. $100 or less, you have to provide a name, a telephone number, or something.
Yeah, but you can have a remark section that says, "I don't want you to list my name on the website," right?
Yes, of course. Yeah, but when if I go to get audited, or if somebody goes to the Secretary of State's website after this quarter is over to see who donated to our campaign, all of that information has to be there for them.
But we don't know where all the cannabis tax money's going. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah,
isn't it, right? And they want to know every single dollar, even if it's $5, they want to know who gave it.
I'd just like to make one last comment. We've invited anybody with an opposing opinion and that feels that 64 should be maintained and that the current status quo must be maintained to please get a hold of us and let's put them on, because I want to go point by point why it is that there's certain social media sites and people out there that seem to prefer this exclusionary licensing practice that beats up the medical cannabis patient's rights. And if those people have the wherewithal to come on and hold their hour on these podcasts, we'd invite them to do so. Because
even
we're going to definitely want to hear why you want them.
Contacted on Twitter about Prop 64, and he started defending it. So,
come on, give us an hour.
Yeah, exactly.
So I just made an offer on CCRW, California City and County Regulation Watch, on our band members Facebook page. If there's people out there that will go to band members, that's where I try to keep these dialogues going. But at the end of the day, a lot's happening, and most of it comes down to what politician's going to sit in Sacramento. Let's get Nick in there.
I had a public official come to our collective's dispensary twice, pull me outside, talk to me in private, say, "Dave, if you just pay the sales taxes, we'll go away and you can stay in business." And I said, "That's great, but
pay the family, just pay."
Are you going to protect me from the federal government or the IRS if they come after me? He said, "Dave, we can't."
Exactly.
I said, "Well, then why would I, pay you money?" Yeah. This is no different than a drug lord telling me if I want to work that corner, sell my drugs on that corner, I got to give him a cut and a payment. I was like, holy shit, what is going on here?
He's making you an offer you can't refuse. So
not once, but twice, because like you guys see, I was like, I'm just reading what I'm reading. This is the facts. This is what it says. And you guys are doing the opposite. And now you're trying to rough me up. I mean, I could go on and on and on about what they did.
Hey, buddy, you're still here. You're back.
Yeah, I mean, at least I don't have a bullet in the back of my head and they say I committed suicide.
There's a lot of that going around.
I'm telling you.
But gentlemen, the timing is now. If we're ever going to save medical marijuana and a person or a patient's right to grow and consume the plant that God put on this earth, it is now. I mean, what just blows my mind here too is we're talking about this Green New Deal, and we want to get away from oil. I'm like, well, why in the hell aren't we blowing up hemp?
Exactly.
And when I say blowing up, why aren't we recreating small farms across the country growing hemp that the government buys and the government replaces poisonous plastic, with hemp biodegradable containers? We stop cutting down trees. We don't have to make steel, or not as much. You know, it's on and on and on and on. I mean, we could clothe and feed the damn world. If you haven't read Jack Herer's The Emperor Wears No Clothes, you need to, because this plant has so many uses and so many values. And if we're serious about the Green New Deal, I mean, what is more green than cannabis and hemp?
Right. Well,
why aren't we making biofuel out of hemp and get rid of gasoline? Yeah, we can grow the fuel right out in the fields, and we can feed the poor across the world. We can clothe everybody. Mm-hmm. We can make medicine that we don't have to go and.
I think I could go on. Somebody like Nick can incentivize that, and he's learning. Every one of these podcasts, he's learning about benefits that go well beyond what he started out knowing. So the reasons he's doing what he's doing right now are only being reinforced.
Nick, and marijuana can save America and the damn world.
Yep.
All right. Well, I saw the video recently, the Hemp for Victory. I think we need a Hemp for Victory 2.0 and start first with California to be an example, you know, and revolutionize the state using cannabis. Like he said, you know, we can have biofuels here in the state. We could be transitioning to using that type of power and harnessing that as a renewable energy instead of, you know, using oil or gasoline or any of those products. We could also use it to build homes, you know, since the stocks are like timber. We can improve the air quality here. You know, you have all of this smog.
Why aren't we using this plant to its full potential? We're talking about this little flower portion over here and leaving out this giant, vast array of things and products that we could be making. And
exactly.
It sounds like Jack Hare is here today. Jack's here today.
Reincarnated, maybe.
Yes, he did.
Absolutely.
Thank you again, Dave, for everything you've done. I really appreciate it, guys. I got to blow out of here. I got a meeting, but I want to thank you again, Dave, for everything you've done with your contributions and raising this awareness. So many people weren't listening, but they're listening now.
Exactly. And they'll be hearing
me. I hope and pray so.
Oh, yeah. More people will be hearing me after this weekend once I lock in my spot as a candidate. So I can't thank you enough for just stepping up to the plate to, again, make that happen, not only for me, but for all of the people of California, because it's truly a unique opportunity with this recall election. And if we can mobilize the people of the state, get them energized to do something different and, you know, vote for a true representative of us, a person of the community versus, you know, a career politician or a superstar celebrity or reality TV show, whatever the case may be. Don't settle for the glitz and glamour. Focus on the grit and grind. And that's what I'm all about. So I can't thank you enough, Dave, for, again, following through with matching all of the donors. And thank you, Cotton, for introducing us both. Well, we'll be chatting again tomorrow when we speak with Mr. Who are you bringing on here tomorrow?
Tomorrow's James Cotton and his wonderful wife, Kim. And I met them when they came to me, and they're not cannabis activists or anything, but they had a 1 million square foot cultivation site being debated at a public forum. And the problem is that it was an area that wouldn't have qualified had it not been for some political connections. And so we looked hard at what that impact would be. And we're talking 1 million square foot on the water, the odor, the lights, everything else on that community. And the community got together. And actually, right now, it's not a done deal. Most of these are done deals, you know, because you paid the money going in and the license is pretty much assured. But they managed to get together as a community and fight it. And we'll hear from James tomorrow. And as his background in science, he's going to be able to talk about the hydrology and the water impact that these large farms are having. So it's going to be good, Nickolas. And another reason for people to listen and come in on this and share these videos is because, these have legs. Come back, review it, listen to it, and know that as a team, as a body of people, we can come together and change this. We must.
And the cannabis community is going to depend on you to save our rights to this plant and the future for our children, Nickolas. So I'm 100% behind you. And anything you need or I can do to help, you let me know.
Thank you
again,
so much, Dave. God bless you, and enjoy the rest of your day. We'll certainly be talking again soon, brothers. You take care.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
All right, you guys. That again was Mr. Dank Dave Armstrong and Darryl Cotton of 151farmers.org. Appreciate those brothers for being here for this community Q&A session, because it was very educational and very enlightening about the depth of corruption here in the state when it comes to what they've done to the economy and the people of this state. I mean, had medicinal marijuana truly been able to thrive as it was showing the possibility of, a lot more businesses like Dank Dave's Metamarts would be all over the state, instead of it being a corporate takeover with what we see now with a lot of these brandings and larger corporations, again, taking over the industry. And we don't want that to happen. And we don't want innocent people having their livelihoods taken away from them, being treated like criminals simply because they're trying to keep a roof over their heads and foods on their table. So what you heard right here today from Mr. Dave himself was that you got to get involved in the Wildstar campaign for California governor. So if you haven't already, please visit the website, wildstar2022.com. You can see that here. Check out the website. Do like my man Dank Dave tried to do and make a donation to the 5K Independence Day money bomb, since I am looking to make $5,000. That'll cover my over $4,000 filing fee, which you can see here by clicking on this link and see for yourself that they are charging candidates $4,194 just to get onto the ballot. Okay. And from my previous run from 2018, when I ran for governor, I learned that in order for you to have a statement in the voter handbook that goes out to all of the registered voters in the state, it's $25 a word. So the $4,000 fee only gets you onto the ballot, and it does not provide any access into that voter handbook. And I want to increase my presence as much as possible in every way, shape, and form. And you have a lot of people that are not paying attention to the media, don't want to go online, but will get that voter handbook and they'll make their decision based on that. So it's imperative that I have a statement in there. I promise not to make it too lengthy, but at $25 a word, I can say all I need to say with an extra $900 or so. So help me reach $5,000 to do exactly what I said to you now, and continue to give more, because I want to continue to travel places like 151 Farms down in San Diego and other places throughout the state, Sacramento, Grass Valley, Nevada County, LA County, Orange County. Want to hit all of the counties, as many counties as I can, to let them know why they should vote Wildstar for governor now. So head on over to the website, wildstar2022.com. Please make a contribution. Please subscribe if you're watching on YouTube by hitting the logo right there in the corner. Or if you're watching on Facebook, please be sure to hit like. All right. And if you haven't connected with me on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all that good stuff, right there, Governor Wildstar, you can find me on TikTok also. I just joined Clubhouse. So if you want to send me a Clubhouse invitation, that'll be at Nick Wildstar on Clubhouse. All right. I'm just getting new to that. Don't expect me to accept the invitation, but if I do, I'll jump into conversation and say hello to you. And please take the Cash App challenge by contributing through Cash App, through Governor Wildstar. That's the tag. I'm still learning about this Cash App shit too. But yeah, use the tag username Governor Wildstar, $ Governor Wildstar, to make a contribution. Every little bit helps us meet that $5,000. And again, thank Dave will be helping us top over $3,000 today. So head on over to the website now, Governor Wildstar, Cash App, and again, wildstar2022.com. Thank you for all of the comments, all of the questions and all of that good stuff. Definitely come back tomorrow where we will be speaking with another cotton here who is a biologist as well as his wife, and find out more about their experiences as well. So I appreciate your time, and I'm going to go ahead and get out of here and take care of my son, you guys. Long live liberty. Peace.